Hare Krishna. Dear devotees present at Sri Sri Radha Golokananda Mandir, viewers in Mauritius and abroad, Hare Krishna, and please accept my humble obeisances. We would like to welcome you all to the launch of a series of programs observing the Shravanam week, which aims at creating a culture of reading the books of Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya. And tonight, to kickstart the Shravanam week, it is indeed our great fortune to have amongst us His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj. Maharaj is a senior-most disciple of Srila Prabhupada. He first met His Divine Grace in 1969 at the Boston University, where he was studying. During that brief, life-changing encounter, Maharaj says that he learned much more than his many years of academic education. Indeed, he joined Boston ISKCON Center right after his graduation, took initiation from Srila Prabhupada, and was soon after given the opportunity to go to India to help Srila Prabhupada establish his mission there. In 1972, he was appointed president of ISKCON Bombay and made a trustee of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust as well. He oversaw all aspects of the development of the Hare Krishna land in Juhu. He was very instrumental to raise funds for the project, which he did by genuinely caring for the spiritual well-being of the people he approached. Over the years, Maharaj was behind various major projects, including the acquisition and development of the Bhaktivedanta Ashram in Govardhan, development of the Kirtan Ashram for Vaishnavis, the Bhaktivedanta Hospice and the Vrindavan Institute of Palliative Care to prepare terminally sick devotees on their final journey back to Godhead. Maharaj was awarded sannyas by His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj on Gaur Puranim of 1978. In 1982, he was appointed GBC for Bombay, Mauritius, South Africa, Spain, Portugal, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan. Consequently, our island of Mauritius was blessed when Maharaj landed here for the first time in March of 1982. He was directly involved in the installation of their lordships, Sri Sri Radha Golokananda at the White House, the seat then of ISKCON in Mauritius in the town of Kathabon. That happened during Janmashtami of 1983. In September 1984, Maharaj inaugurated the first Padayatra ever in the country with the brahmacharis at that time. This was at the same time Padayatra was launched in India. Maharaj and his team toured the country, establishing Krishna consciousness in every town and village. Maharaj also inaugurated the Grand Bassin Marathon. This happens during Mahashivratri time, where about 300,000 people flock to the sacred lake at Grand Bassin to honor Lord Shiva. He personally organized the Food for Life, Harinam, and book distribution there. This is today the next biggest book distribution event, apart from the December Srila Prabhupada Book Marathon. Maharaj also started a local newspaper called ISKCON World Review. Maharaj also started Ashtami celebrations on a grand scale in Mauritius, and he started and encouraged college and university preaching. He personally trained devotees in leadership. His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj was instrumental in the purchase of the Hare Krishna land at Pomfea, Phoenix, where their beautiful lordship, Sri Sri Radha Golokananda, now reside. He organized for devotees to go abroad to collect for the purchase of the land. Day before yesterday, His Grace Giridhari Prabhu was telling me that after collecting, there was still an amount that could not be raised. And the father of His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj personally contributed that amount. His Grace Giridhari Prabhu also mentioned that during one of his last visits to Mauritius, maybe 1998, Maharaj had told him that he had promised Sri Sri Radha Golokananda that he would give them a temple. Currently, a major project is underway to build a magnificent temple for Sri Sri Radha Golokananda. We request the Yatra to push on with great enthusiasm so that within a short span, we can complete the project. For the pleasure of the Lordships, and at the same time, fulfill the promise of His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj to their Lordships. It will be our way to express our deep gratitude to him for his personal efforts at the cost of great personal inconvenience for our sake. Maharaj has also taught Srila Prabhupada's books at the Vrindavan Institute for Higher Education and continues to lecture and give presentations at Japa retreats and workshops around the world. Presently based in Carpinteria, California, Giriraj Maharaj is now focusing on one of the main personal instructions he received from Srila Prabhupada, which is to write. He is the author of Watering the Seed and Many Moons, and he's working on several publications, including books about death and dying in the Vedic tradition, his search for a spiritual master, and his early days in the Boston Temple, his travels with Srila Prabhupada in India, and Srila Prabhupada's monumental efforts in Bombay, and also about Vaishnava holidays. Maharaj is thus most qualified to talk to us today about the importance and relevance of Srila Prabhupada's books in a devotee's life, how we should approach the books, how we should study them. Before passing over to Maharaj, kindly note that we shall have a question and answer session at the end. You may write your questions in the chat box in Zoom or on Facebook, and devotees sitting in the temple hall, they'll be given some paper and pen also on which they will write the questions. Shrutidhar Prabhu and his team shall be reading the questions to Maharaj at the end. With this, we pass on to His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj, who we welcome once again by the loud chanting of Hari Bol 3 times. Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Hari Bol! His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj ki.
Hare Krishna. It is a great
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
honor and privilege and pleasure to be here with all of you for this most auspicious purpose of discussing why and how to read Srila Prabhupada's books. And I'm also very pleased to see the progress on the temple construction. And yeah, I look forward to its completion. And I would hope to attend the grand opening in person. So I'll begin by reciting the Mangalacharana prayers and leading a short kirtan. And then I will speak on the subject. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttha Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnava Uttha Shri Rupam Sagradatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vikram Tam Sajivam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Bhavita Vishakhanvitamscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Gurudeva, Srila Gurudeva. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Pariprajakacharya Stotra Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Pariprajakacharya Stotra Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to all of you. So one personal request, I would like the devotees to put on their videos as far as possible so I can see you, and that will make the interaction more personal. Today's topic is reading Srila Prabhupada's books, why and how. I will begin first by discussing why. The first reason is that we need to remain strong in spiritual life. And I will read one quotation from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 25, text 278. The text reads, "Men become strong and stout by eating sufficient grains. But the devotees who simply eat ordinary grains, but do not taste the transcendental pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna, gradually become weak and fall down from the transcendental position. However, if one drinks but a drop of the nectar of Krishna's pastimes, his body and mind begin to bloom, and he begins to laugh, sing, and dance." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. All the devotees connected with the Krishna consciousness movement must read all the books that have been translated: the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and others. Otherwise, after some time, they will simply eat, sleep, and fall down from their position. Thus, they will miss the opportunity to attain an eternal, blissful life of transcendental pleasure. And I might mention here that falling down doesn't have to be gross. It can be, of course, but it can also be subtle, that we lose our conviction in Krishna consciousness. We lose our enthusiasm to practice and preach Krishna consciousness. But if we read all the books, as Srila Prabhupada is instructing, we will attain an eternal blissful life of transcendental pleasure. Another reason why we should read the books is so that we can properly represent the Krishna consciousness movement. In a talk on Srimad Bhagavatam 6.138 on June 4th, 1976 in Los Angeles, Srila Prabhupada spoke about this important necessity for us. The verse is, Shri Vishnu Duta Uchu, Yuyam Vaidamaraja Yadi Nirdesha Karina, Ruta Dharmasya Nastatvam, Yachtra Dharmasya Lakshanam. The blessed messengers of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, said, if you are actually servants of Yamaraj, you must explain to us the meaning of religious principles and the symptoms of religion. Bhagavatam 6.1.3. So I hope all of you are reading Srila Prabhupada's books, and if so, you will know that in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is the history of Ajamil. Ajamil was born in a good Brahmin family, and he was well behaved. But due to bad association, he fell down and married a prostitute and engaged in all sorts of sinful activities with her and for her sake. And he had a son named Narayan. And at the time of death, the Yamadutas, the messengers of Yamaraj, came to take him to be punished. And Ajamil, in a panic-stricken state, called for his son Narayan. And when he uttered the holy name of Narayan, those 4 syllables, Narayana, the messengers of Lord Narayan, Vishnu, came. So there was a discussion between the Yamadutas and the Vishnudutas about who had jurisdiction over Ajamil. The Yamadutas claimed that they had jurisdiction because he was sinful and he should be taken to Yamaraj for punishment. And the Vishnudutas, of course, claimed that they had jurisdiction because at that final moment, Ajamil had uttered the holy name of Narayana. And although he was calling for his son, the acharyas comment that calling the holy name of Narayan reminded him of the original Narayan, whom he had worshipped in his youth. So there was a discussion, who has jurisdiction? And so the Vishnudutas challenged the Yamadutas, and out of this, Srila Prabhupada draws a very important lesson for us. So the blessed messengers of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnudutas, said, if you are actually servants of Yamaraj, you must explain to us the meaning of religious principles and the symptoms of irreligion. Bhagavatam 6.1.3. The Yamadutas had challenged, who are you interfering with our business? We have come to arrest him. So the counter challenge was, you said we are servants of Dharmaraj, it is his jurisdiction. This person is impious, so this is in the jurisdiction of Dharmaraj. He has to try the case and give him punishment. criminal department, law and order. So you cannot interfere with us. That was what the Yamaduta said. Therefore, the challenge was replied by the Vishnu Dutas. If you are actually representatives of Dharmaraj, who tries the cases of Dharma and Adharma, first of all explain what is Dharma and what is Adharma. Then Srila Prabhupada says, this is a very nice challenge. Suppose if you say, we are Krishna conscious persons, one may challenge you. First of all, explain what you know about Krishna. That is quite natural. If you do not know about Krishna, you have no right to say that I belong to the Krishna consciousness movement. You have no right to say. So your position is like that. Simply, if you have tilak and kanti neck beads, that does not mean you belong to the Krishna consciousness movement. Any cheater can do that. You must know the philosophy. If one challenges, you must reply. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung a song indicating these cheaters. He says, Eota te eka kalira chela. Here is a servant of Kali. What kind of chela, disciple? Nake tilak galaya mala. He has got tilak and galaya mala, neck beads, bas, that's all. He does not know what is the philosophy. If you do not know the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, if you simply mark your body with tilak and kanti, then you are not a proper servant. You are not qualified. So tilak mala is necessary, just like a policeman. A bogus man, if he dresses like a policeman, is not a policeman. He must know what is the police law, criminal law, who is to be punished, who is not to be punished, what is criminality, what is innocence. All these things he must know. So this is another reason why we should study Srila Prabhupada's book, so we can properly represent the Krishna consciousness movement. We can explain the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And another reason is that Srila Prabhupada took this great effort to translate these books and write these books for us. He said that his books are meant for everyone, but especially for his sincere devotees. So we should reciprocate the effort, monumental effort, superhuman effort he meant to translate and write these books. Srila Prabhupada would generally retire at around 10 o'clock at night, sleep only 2 hours, sleep or rest, whatever, 2 hours. And then he would get up at midnight. And while we were all sleeping, he would be dictating his books. So we should appreciate the effort that Srila Prabhupada made, the pains he took to produce these literatures for us to read. So in a talk on Srimad Bhagavatam 611 on May 21st, 1975 in Melbourne, he said, we have got Krishna, we have got spiritual master, we have got books, Bhagavat, Gita. Now let us take advantage. These transcendental literatures, we have taken much pain to translate them into English so that you can understand. We have got 50 books, so take advantage. It is not meant for the cats and dogs, it is meant for the human being. Not a particular class or nation, no. It is meant for all human beings. So take advantage of this knowledge. Understand the philosophy of life, that I am eternal. During these difficult times, I always feel the urgent need for Srila Prabhupada's books to be distributed and read in large numbers. For only such literature can enlighten people how to proceed in the right way. And Srila Prabhupada's preface to Srimad Bhagavatam is profoundly relevant. His Grace Radhika Raman Das, who is a brilliant scholar, has spoken about different ways of writing, in Sanskrit in particular. And generally, the two categories are poetry and prose. But he said there's a type of Sanskrit that is prose, but it's very poetic. And he said that Srila Prabhupada's preface to Srimad Bhagavatam is like that. It's prose, but it's very poetic. So I'll read a little from it because it's a very inspiring, and it shows the urgency for people, of course, beginning with us, to study Srila Prabhupada's books, and in particular, Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srila Prabhupada writes at the preface, "We must know the present need of human society. And what is that need? Human society is no longer bounded by geographical limits to particular countries or communities. And the world tendency is toward one state or one human society." Now, this is very relevant to our temple in Mauritius, the temple of unity. So what will be the basis of that unity? That is explained here by Srila Prabhupada in his preface to Srimad Bhagavatam. The world tendency is toward one state or one human society. The ideals of Srimad Bhagavatam are based more or less on the oneness of the entire human society, nay, of the entire energy of living beings. The need is felt by great thinkers to make this a successful ideology. Srimad Bhagavatam will fulfill this need in human society. It begins, therefore, with an aphorism of Vedanta philosophy, Janmadhyasa Yataha, to establish the ideal of a common cause. Human society at the present moment is not in the darkness of oblivion. It has made rapid progress in the fields of material comforts, education, and economic development throughout the entire world. But there is a pinprick somewhere in the social body at large, and therefore there are large-scale quarrels, even over less important issues. There is need of a clue as to how humanity can be one in peace, friendship, and prosperity with a common cause. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need, for it is a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. There is God, or the Almighty One, from whom everything emanates. The ultimate source is explained rationally and authoritatively in the beautiful Bhagavatam, or Srimad Bhagavatam. I am hopeful of its good reception by the thinkers and leaders of society. And part of today's topic is yes, why why we should read Srila Prabhupada's books and how we should read them. And one of the last purports that Srila Prabhupada dictated in Srimad Bhagavatam, he was lying on his bed in Vrindavan. He was bedridden, and Pradumya Prabhu and Jayadvaita Prabhu, they were by his bedside holding the microphone to his mouth. And Pradumya Prabhu had the book with the commentaries, so he would read the commentaries, which Srila Prabhupada would take into consideration while he was dictating his purports. And one of the last purports that Srila Prabhupada dictated is so important for us. And he gives a very specific instruction. We should discuss Srimad Bhagavatam daily as much as possible. I repeat, we should discuss Srimad Bhagavatam daily as much as possible. And then everything will be clarified. For Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedic literature. Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam. It was written by Vyasadeva, Mahamuni Krite, when he was self-realized. Thus, the more we read Srimad Bhagavatam, the more its knowledge becomes clear. Each and every verse is transcendental. And then, just picking up on that theme, in a talk on Srimad Bhagavatam 116.8 on January 5th, 1974 in Los Angeles, Srila Prabhupada said, "This is the Bhagavat. There is no comparison. There is no literature throughout the universe like Srimad Bhagavatam. There is no comparison. There is no competition. Every word is for the good of the human society. Every word, each and every word. Therefore, we stress so much on book distribution. Somehow or other, if the book goes in one's hand, he will be benefited. At least he will think, oh, they have taken so much price. Let me see what is there. If he reads one shloka, his life will be successful. If he reads one shloka, one word, this is such a nice thing. Therefore, we are stressing so much. Please distribute book. Please distribute book. Please distribute book. A greater mridanga. We are chanting, playing on our mridanga. It is heard within this room or a little more. But this greater mridanga will go home to home, country to country, community to community, this brihad mridanga. So, yeah, it's so important that we read Srila Prabhupada's books for many reasons. And how to read Srila Prabhupada's books, of course, in one sense, Srila Prabhupada has given the answer that we should read them regularly and discuss them, read them daily and discuss them. The more we discuss, the more the matter will become clarified. And another instruction on how to read them is nicely developed by our God brother, His Grace Murijan Das, who wrote an article called Prayerful Reading. And the idea of prayerful reading is that while reading, we are praying to Srila Prabhupada and the previous acharyas to instruct us, to tell us what we need to know at this particular time and in this particular situation to apply in our life. And so many devotees have experienced that when they had some problem, some questions, some challenge, they opened Srila Prabhupada's book and the answer came right out of the page, just what they needed to hear. So yeah, we should read in a prayerful mood to gain instructions that will be relevant and beneficial for us to apply in our lives. Yeah, the books are actually alive. They're Krishna. I mean, Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna. Bhagavad Gita is Krishna. And along with Krishna, Srila Prabhupada. So they're there to speak to us and to tell us what we should do and what we should not do, what we should think and what we should not think, what we should desire and what we should not desire. They're there to provide guidance for us in every aspect of our life. The third verse of Srimad Bhagavatam is beautiful, and it says that the Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge. Nigamakalpa taror galitam phalam shukamukad amrita dravya samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhur aho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. So, a desire tree, Kalpatra, a desire tree fulfills all desires. And we all have various desires, and naturally we want our desires to be fulfilled. And they can be fulfilled best, most completely and most blissfully by Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, in this shloka, it is stated that Srimad Bhagavatam is not only a superior literature, but is the ripened fruit of all Vedic literatures. In other words, it is the cream of all Vedic knowledge. Considering all this, patient and submissive hearing is definitely essential. With great respect and attention, one should receive the message and lessons imparted by the Bhagavatam. The Vedas are compared to a desire tree because they contain all things knowable by man. But the highest spiritual realization is knowledge that the personality of Godhead is the reservoir of all tastes or rasas. And I'll just read one more wonderful verse in glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is 1:343. Krishne Sadama Pogate Dharma Gyanadi Bisaha Kalonashtatrisham Esha Puranarko Dunodita. Translation. This Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. And at the end of his purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, Srimad Bhagavatam is the summum bonum of life, Lord Sri Krishna personified. We must therefore accept Srimad Bhagavatam as the direct representation of Lord Krishna. One who can see Srimad Bhagavatam can also see Lord Sri Krishna in person. They are identical. So my dear devotees, Srila Prabhupada has left us a wealth of transcendental literature, which are Krishna and the entire parampara and Srila Prabhupada. And so we should take advantage of their association and guidance for a life of eternal bliss and knowledge. So now I think that we can open the floor for questions or comments. But this, I can say, is very purifying and enlivening to speak about Srila Prabhupada's books and glorify Srimad Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada and all of Srila Prabhupada's books. Hare Krishna. So I guess you can raise your hand, or if people have put questions in the chat. But when it comes to asking the question, I would like to see the face of the person who's asking the question. Then it will be more personal. And not only questions, also you can share reflections and realizations. So, Haridev Prabhu, will you be sort of managing this?
Krishna Maharaj. I'll just ask Sridhar Prabhu if there are any questions that he can read from the chat box.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yes, we have one question from a devotee from the audience who would like to know, what should one do if while reading the books of Srila Prabhupada, one cannot understand the teachings? So how should one go about it?
Okay, that's a very good question. Is the person who asked the question here on the Zoom conference?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah, Nice.
The devotee wishes to keep anonymity, Maharaj.
Oh. Okay. All right. I don't know why, because it was a very good question. So, what do we do if we're reading Srila Prabhupada's books and we don't understand something? There are two primary processes. The first is to read it again. When the Nectar of Devotion first came out, there were, of course, it was new to us, and some of it was, quite advanced. And Srila Prabhupada said, if we come to something we don't understand, we should just read it again and again. And I cite my dear godbrother Burijan Prabhu again, who has written wonderful books to help us understand Srila Prabhupada's books, especially the Bhagavad Gita. He wrote a book called Surrender Unto Me, and also Srimad Bhagavatam. He has written 2 books so far. One on the first 4 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then one on the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he says he gets so many of his insights just by reading and rereading and rereading and rereading. And yeah, so the more you read it, the more it becomes clear. There was one exchange between Prabhupada's disciple Jadharani Dasi and Srila Prabhupada very early in the history of the movement, when Srila Prabhupada first came to America. And so she had come across a statement that the moon is churned from the ocean of milk. And Srila Prabhupada instructed her to repeat that. She repeated it. There's a little feedback. I don't know what the cause of that is, but anyway. So she repeated it. The moon is churned by the ocean of milk, from the ocean of milk. And he asked her to repeat it again. The moon is churned from the ocean of milk. And again, the moon is churned from the ocean of milk. And then Srila Prabhupada asked her, now do you understand? And she said, yes. The moon is churned from the ocean of milk. So repetition, and Srila Prabhupada also repeats within his purports, like he said, repetition is necessary for understanding. And he said, we will not say that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in one purport. We will say that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in every purport. So repetition. And then the other way is by discussion, by consultation. You can approach some devotee, a friend or a mentor, and say, I read this and I don't understand it. Can you help me to understand it? And there's a chance that the person will understand it and be able to explain it. But even not, the two of you can discuss together. And it will, as Srila Prabhupada said, discuss, read Srimad Bhagavatam daily as much as possible. The more you discuss, the more the subject becomes clarified. Good question. Any other questions?
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. We have another question from Neha Mishra Mataji on Facebook, who is following us live on Facebook. Mataji asks how to balance one's material and spiritual life.
There should be no material life. It should be spiritual only. What we consider material can be spiritualized by dovetailing it with Krishna's service, with Krishna consciousness. The basic principle of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is to always remember Krishna and never forget him. And all the other injunctions and prohibitions are servants of the one injunction, always remember Krishna, and the one prohibition, never forget Krishna. So whatever we do, we should do in Krishna consciousness. Say if we have children, so we should raise them in Krishna consciousness, raise them to become good devotees. If we're earning money, we should use that money, to support our Krishna conscious lifestyle, and whatever we don't need, for ourselves and our family members, we can give for spreading Krishna consciousness. Everything should be dovetailed in Krishna consciousness. But we do, in our state, we do need to keep the body and soul together. So we need to eat and sleep. All these things are there in the Bhagavad Gita. One should not eat too much or eat too little. I'm reminded of a time when His Holiness Indradumya Swami and I were invited for lunch at a devotee's home in Durban, South Africa. And they had prepared an elaborate feast, but the way they served it, it seemed like they had served everything, and then they'd bring out something else. And then we would think, all right, that's the end. All right, well, and then they'd bring out something else. All right, we'll have a little more. And then they bring out something else. So I said to Indradumya Swami, this is very difficult. And Indradumya Swami replied, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, one should not eat too much or eat too little. So he said, today we're focusing on not eating too little. So, but yes, in a way, balance is necessary. And, what constitutes the proper balance at one stage may not be the proper balance at another stage. The proportions may change. And we should pray. We should always be praying all the time to Srila Prabhupada, to Gaur Nitai, to the Parampara, to Krishna, to guide us so that we can serve them nicely and without any disruption. And, coming back to that phrasing of material and spiritual, if we neglect some aspect of our material life, so to speak, it can cause a disturbance in our spiritual life. So we do need to take care of all aspects of our life. But ultimately, everything in our life should be spiritual, because even keeping the body and soul together, the purpose is ultimately to serve Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Actually, we have one last question, Maharaj, if that is okay with you.
Sure.
Srila Prabhu, you read the question, please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the answer. We have a question from Nitya Radha Dasi from Facebook. It's about how to transform majority mindsets of people not primarily interested in philosophy, books readings, rather attracted towards Krishna, Kirtan and other services. Sorry. So they are not attracted to book reading, but rather to Kirtan and other services.
Yes, I mean, there are 9 processes of devotional service enumerated by Prahlad Maharaj. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmani, Vedanam. And Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada explained that one can achieve perfection by executing all of the processes, or 1 or 2 or 3 of the processes. So Shravanam, reading, is one of the processes, but so is Kirtanam, chanting or glorifying. So if someone doesn't have taste for reading, they can still progress by, by kirtan, by serving, and probably by becoming purified by kirtan and by seva, they will develop a taste for hearing or reading, because that's a very necessary to hear about Krishna, read about Krishna. But in the meantime, yes, they can chant, they can do service, and that will, I would say, bring them to the stage of appreciating the books.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for the enlightening answer. We have one last question from His Grace Vyas Krishna Prabhu and his good wife Rai Kishori Mataji. Prabhu and Mataji asks, how can we organize a routine to read the books? And if there is any specific requirement to read specific books on specific days, for example, Bhagavatam Srimad Bhagavatam on weekdays, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita on Saturday, or Srila Prabhupada Lilamrit on Sundays. Can you please give an insight, Maharaj? Thank you.
Yeah, well, we should read Srila Prabhupada's books every day. He repeatedly advised that we should read his books for at least an hour a day. And sometimes, of course, I think this is more for temple devotees or ashram devotees, for 2 or 3 hours a day. And you have to include it in your schedule. Like you include breakfast in your schedule every day. You include lunch in your schedule every day. Include dinner in your schedule every day. You include sleep in your schedule every day. And I hope you include 16 rounds in your schedule every day. So in the same way, we should include some reading every day. Srila Prabhupada said in relation to his 16 rounds when he was a grihasta, that he would chant 4 rounds before breakfast. He wouldn't have breakfast until he chanted 4 rounds. He would chant 4 rounds before lunch. He would chant 4 rounds before dinner, and he would chant 4 rounds before taking rest at night. So in that way, he was sure that he would complete his 16 rounds. So yeah, I guess you just have to put it in the schedule. As far as what to read when, I've never heard such advice. Although on September 18th, the Purushottam Adhik Mas is beginning, that extra month that comes every 3 years to keep the lunar calendar in line with the solar calendar. And it is recommended in the Purushottam month that one should read the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is called Purushottam Yoga. One should read the 15th chapter every day. But otherwise, there's no such rule that one should read a certain book on a certain day. I mean, the general progression is, first Ishopanishad, then Bhagavad Gita, then the Nectar of Devotion, then the Srimad Bhagavatam, then Chaitanya Charitamrita. But I asked Srila Prabhupada about reading, and he said, it's all nectar. And, wherever you have a taste, wherever you have an inclination, you just read that. Is that all right, Vyas Krishna Prabhu? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maharaj. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Haridev Prabhu would now conclude the session. Haridev Prabhu, please.
So we'd like to thank you very much, Maharaj, for having taken your time to share with us your realizations about Srila Prabhupada's, reading Srila Prabhupada's books. Just a quick recapitulation of what we've learned from you today is that it's very important to read the books. Why? For three main reasons. First, to remain strong in spiritual life. Like you gave the example of a person eating grains to remain strong. That's for an ordinary person. But if a devotee just eats grains and doesn't read Srila Prabhupada's books, then he will drop from the spiritual path. So it's very important to read. Secondly, you mentioned that it's very important to read Srila Prabhupada's books so that we can properly represent Srila Prabhupada and the Krishna consciousness movement. And also, it's an expression of our gratitude, reciprocation with Srila Prabhupada for his great effort that he's put to reading, to writing all these books. And how to read the books? You mentioned about regularity and daily we should read, we should discuss. And you also mentioned about prayerful reading in which we pray to the acharyas, to Srila Prabhupada, to the Guru, the spiritual master, to reveal to us what we need to know through our reading at that particular time and at that particular situation in our life. So we would like to thank you very much, Maharaj, once again. And we hope that in the near future, we'll be having the opportunity to hear from you again, for you to address the Mauritian Yatra. So it's been very wonderful to have your association, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah. And I wish you all success with the temple project.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. So we'd like to express our gratitude to His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj by saying Haribol 3 times, very loudly. Haribol! Haribol!
So we can end by offering Vaishnava Pranam.
Sorry, Maharaj?
End by saying Vaishnava Pranam.
Mute.
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj.
Let us offer a respectful obeisance Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are just like desire trees, who can fulfill the desires of everyone, and are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam bhavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda
Ki Jai.
Ki Jai.
Hari Bol, Guru Maharaj.
महाराज की जय
Jai.
जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की
Jai.
जय
Hari Bol.
श्रील प्रभुपाद बुक्स की जय
Jai.
Jai. Jai. Jai.